Hi everyone, welcome to episode 33 of On My Studio Table. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you to my regulars who keep supporting me, which is wonderful. And also thank you to any new subscribers. I have been so pleased to see that my channel is growing steadily, and it's all down to you, and I thank you very, very much. Behind me I have hanging some eco-printed clothing, which I did just before I was participating in an event in November. And I promised that I would list them after the event because I didn't want them to sell before I left, so that I wasn't too low in stock for the pop-up shop that I had. And I have to admit that I hadn't got around to listing them. So I'm going to rectify that, and over the next few days I will be listing these items. All of these were eco-printed with leaves from our property. I know that in Australia we're actually in summer at the moment, so these are quite wintry items, but I'm thinking about my overseas viewers and the fact that you need to keep warm in winter, and if you want to wear something that's unique and has been eco-printed with love, I guess you could say, this could be for you. Also in Tasmania, even though we've had some hot weather this summer, our weather has been quite cool, generally speaking. And certainly our evenings are often cool. So it's really nice to have something that you can throw over your clothing as an extra layer. I will be listing them, as I said, in the next few days. We're also doing as much as we can to get our little art space up and running. I called it a studio cabin in the last episode, but actually it's more like an art shed. So we're going to call it an art shed, and it will be a studio and gallery space, but it will be just 4 walls and a roof, plus door and windows and skylights. It'll also be off-grid, and we're going to depend on natural light for being able to work there. And it will have light-coloured walls to actually help this along as well. The other thing about it is, and I did hint at this before, is that we would like to make it available for artist in residences. So if you're an artist and you need some studio time because you might not have your own, or you just want to try it in a different environment, this will be available for you to use for several days up to a week to do some work and to hang up any work that you want to for that time that you're in the residence. So you'll be able to work there. You'll also be able to display your things there, and people will be able to come and visit you and see you at work and see your work. It's also possible to hold workshops there. So I'll be doing this myself, but in between we hope to encourage other artists also. Being a regional community, sometimes we're not exposed to the same amount of opportunities as to see art as we are, say, in the urban environment. So it's lovely that we can actually invite artists into this area. So not only can they enjoy the lovely natural environment here, but they can share their work and we can actually see it and enjoy it as well. So we're still estimating costs, looking at ways to finance. And in the meantime, I've set a fundraising page on PayPal, and the link is underneath this video. So if you would like to contribute, we're also going to have some incentives, which will mean that you can actually win 1 or more nights as an artist in residence in the new art shed. So I'll keep you posted as developments happen. The projects that I've been sharing about is a circle project, and this is a year-long exercise, and I have shared a couple of my entries already. I've tied it together with sari ribbon, which has been dyed with onion skin dye, and the cover is a piece of eco-printed fabric. It's either cotton or linen, I'm not sure which. But the big change that's happened since I last shared this with you is that I've actually sewn the signatures in. and I don't know if you can see that. There's a line of machine stitching, 4 lines of machine stitching there, where I've attached the signatures. I'll just put that aside for a moment. So when I open it, it doesn't look much different to what it did before, except that these are now attached. And each signature, I found the middle of the group of pages, and initially I zigzagged down the middle to hold them together, and then when I attached them to the cover, I drew lines on the fabric and then stitched them down with a straight stitch. I started from the back, actually. I'm in the front here, but I started from the back and sewed a straight stitch over the top. And I only had the little line showing at the top and the bottom to tell me whether I was going straight or not. And so I had to almost sew by blind faith, by making sure that the crease was lined up with those lines. And it worked out really well for 3 signatures. And then the second last signature, I actually had to undo and do it again. But now they're all joined in, and I can keep filling it. I've done a little bit of video about attaching the signatures into the journal. So hopefully you can see how I did it, and it might inspire you to give it a go as well. It wasn't the easiest thing I've ever done, but I'm glad I persisted with it. The latest exercise that we had, I really did enjoy, partly because it had tea bags in it, which I really like, and I already have incorporated them into the pages. But we had to use some tea bags to cover a piece of cloth. I just used a bit of cotton canvas, but the recommendation was to use some wool felt or wool cloth. And we had to stitch using a blanket stitch, starting from the middle, working out. In the demonstration piece, just one colour was used, but I decided to use a few different colours. So I started with a silk, which was a variegated silk. Then I continued with a couple of different shades of green and I think maybe some gold. And then I finished it with the variegated silk again. And I really enjoyed doing that. You didn't draw your circle beforehand, so you had to try and keep it into a circle shape while you were stitching. And that was a bit challenging, but I think I achieved it reasonably well. I used 3 different types of bags. So that's a tea bag and that's a tea bag, 2 different types. And this one is a coffee bag, and I quite like the colour contrast. Also, rather than trim off the edges, I let the bags actually protrude from the edge in the shape that they were. And I quite like that. It added a bit of interest to the whole design, I thought. So I'm looking forward to the next exercise and seeing what will happen. Sometimes you need a bit of light relief when you're working on some fairly serious subjects or things that require a lot of thought. And I have mentioned this once or twice, that you just really need something that's a bit lighter to work on sometimes. And I was really fascinated to see that Lisbeth Degn of Dragonkunst demonstrated a single hinge binding. And that is actually the hinge. And I will be attaching a cover to that. And I'll share a link to her video about this and her collage that she puts in it, so you can see what she's doing. My collage that I'm starting to put in it is very different. I'm probably a bit influenced by Kelly of Book and Paper Arts, because a lot of her illustrated journals and art journals really tell a story, and it often happens accidentally when you combine different elements together in your collage. So I think that's what's happening in this book, in this little, I suppose you could call it a glue book. I had a country magazine that I didn't need anymore, so I started to cut and tear pictures out of it and text, and just made a pile of them, and then started to arrange them on the pages. And I'm really enjoying it. There's no painting, no stitching, no drawing, nothing except gluing and the tearing and the cutting. And it's actually a good exercise artistically also, because you have to think about balance and line and where you want the eye to go. So often diagonals work better than straight lines, and offsetting things is more interesting than having things directly underneath each other. So in this one, for example, I've offset these elements, and then the fork in the road phrase isn't in the middle, it's off to the left. And I've done the same with this text here and with the elements here, just arrange them in a way that looks more interesting than just putting them directly underneath each other. And it's actually a good way to get your creative juices going. If you're a bit stuck in your other work, doing something like this, which is a bit more lighthearted, can really help to free you up. And I've left a blank page. And this one I've made as a double spread. And this one really does tell a story. You've got a woman with a suitcase going up the road, and open country. These are all Australian scenes. A newborn lamb and some garden plants and a fence. And it's almost like this woman is embarking on a new adventure. She's putting her previous life behind her, and she's going forward to find something new. She wants more, and she has a mind for life, and she has ideas in her imagination. So the newborn lambs actually signify that new direction or new life that she might want to be taking. So it's interesting how I didn't plan this, but it actually ended up telling a story. I have quite a few more pages to fill, and I'll just do that as I feel like it. You can see that there's a hinge there that's holding the pages together. And the lovely thing about this method is that it lies flat. So, and then you can attach covers later on. You probably recognise too that these are dictionary pages from the old dictionary that I've been using for some years now. I've been working on the comfort cloth quite intensively and really enjoying it. And I mentioned in the last video that I'd selected these threads here for work on this project, because the colours seem to reflect what was in the fabrics that I chose. But I did end up adding another couple of colours. One was this cream thread and one was this soft green. So I'll just move these and I'll show you where I ended up using those. This one I used to do the stitching around the circle or spiral, and I whip stitched it as well because I wanted it to stand out, and that was actually the best one I thought I could use so that you could see it. This looks light here and here, but that's actually a soft orange variegated cotton, and this is a soft aqua variegated cotton. I'll just show you those. So they're the ones that I used for that. One of the more unusual ones that I used is this silk tubular ribbon. And I used that for a couple of rows in these curved lines of stitching here. And also when I did the flower to do the lines in the middle. And you'll notice also that I took these lines over the edge of the fabric. All I had was this square here. So I extended the flower into the blue and continued these lines into the blue also. And then I also echoed the leaves and so on in some stitching around the outside, just to extend that pattern through the design. Most of this was decided intuitively, and that's how I usually work. So once I'd laid out the fabrics, I just started stitching around this, and then that would lead to something else. When I started with these, I outlined them first, and then I started to do lines over the top, and that was inspired by the curve on this piece of vintage silk kimono. And then when I did these radiating lines, I started here where this strip is and then radiated them out. And it actually looks like it's spinning because of the way the lines have worked out. So I quite like that. It just gives a bit of life and movement to the piece. This is a torn piece of cheesecloth and it frays quite a lot. So I did large cross stitch over the top as a type of couching, and then a running stitch to hold the cross stitch in place because the bars of the cross stitch are quite big. I put a piece of vintage lace here, which I really like, and I made these lines go underneath that so they didn't interfere with the design of the lace. This piece up here has a key which was sun printed onto the fabric, and I almost obscured it with the lines of stitching, and I quite like that. I think it adds a bit of mystery to the piece. The soft green I ended up using just to outline this triangle here and this shape here. Because they have frayed edges, even though they've been invisibly basted, I thought they really needed a little bit more. So I'm really excited to know what the next stage will be. One of the things that came up in the last video that Kathryn did was to add some text and some seed stitch. So I'm thinking I'll add some text here. I've got a bit of an idea of what it will be, and then decide where I might add some seed stitch. But apart from that, I think it's pretty much done. In the last day or two, I've been doing a bit more work in my Wetlands journal, and I don't think it's got that far to go. I still have some blank pages, and some of the pages are quieter than other pages, and I'll just do a quick demonstration of what I mean by that. So the cover has quite a lot going on, and the front cover features the words "Where Water Thrives," and I've also put that on the first page, because to finish the sentence, "Where water thrives, water birds fly." That's a bit of parchment paper which I've shared before. Some of the pages are old sheet music, and these seem to be a bit quieter. It might be because the background is a bit more muted with the vintage paper colour, which has become like a tea colour. I'm not really sure why, but they just seem to be a quieter palette. So I have some eco-printed paper there, some tea bag, the sheet music, of course, and a strip of the eco-printed paper behind as well. And even the thread colours are quite muted against that background. But I haven't changed the thread colours that much. I'm using the same thread colours on most of the pages, with a few additions from time to time. That one is a pocket, and I think since I showed you last, I have stitched around the edge of that. And I have mentioned before that these shapes are like ghostly shapes. So if the wetlands are compromised or disappear altogether, the birds that live there and need it for the habitat will be just memories. So they'll be like ghosts in our memories. And maybe even the memories will die out after a few generations, who knows. But I don't want us to give up hope when I'm making this journal. So I have put the hope there, and there's a few other places too where that comes up. This one I really like. It's probably my favourite page, and I shared this in the last video. It's parchment paper, which I have eco-printed. So there's a page that's waiting for me to work on it. I did patch it because I cut out a piece to use somewhere else, probably in my fast fashion journal. So that's awaiting a design, and so is that one. And then we're back to eco-printed papers, which I've embellished. And if you're new to this video or to my series, the collage comes from publicity material from a conservation organisation that I get in the mail. So you could call it junk mail, but it actually has very valuable information, and it was so well written. I really loved it. I have also shared this little book, and when you open it, the cover right across says, across the globe, 40% of all flora and fauna species live or breed in wetland ecosystems. So that's quite a high percentage. And then I've used more bits of the promotional material to make this little book, and then just a green paper clip to hold it all in place. I like to have that interactive element as well, and sometimes there will be flaps in my journals too, so people can lift them up and look at them. You'll see some recurring stitches as well. Feather stitch features in this one, and it features in quite a few. This straight stitch also, and this again is a quieter page with a coffee bag and part of a tea bag and some eco-printed paper. Another page waiting for me to do it. So this one has a flap, and I shared this in the last video, plus a little tag. And I also have been using stamped text. Here I've put when and if. And this is a recent one that I've done. And this is ripples, representing ripples, a ghost of a heron, and when or if. When they become extinct or if they become extinct. I'm hoping that it's more like if rather than when, because when seems to be rather final. I also put from the envelope expiry date, because we're so used to looking at expiry dates on our food products in particular. I just hope there isn't an expiry date on the flora and fauna that live in the wetlands. Another page waiting for me to embellish it, and I think there are actually two, yes. This is one that I've just finished. I think it's finished. It does feel like I need to put something there, but I haven't been able to think of what to put there. And I've put some cross stitch there and some straight stitches also here, feather stitch, another tab, which I did mention last time, I think, and some found buttons. When I was punching the holes for this bit, I didn't realise I was actually holding two pages together. And I have said a few times, every mistake is a creative opportunity. So I'm hoping that's what's happened, because the next page had holes punched in there because I was holding it at the same time as the other page. So luckily it was where the duck's wing was being stretched out, and I just followed the holes, and they seemed to follow the line of the wing being outstretched. So luckily it turned out okay. Wasn't what I planned though. Here is a little bit of seed stitch. I think I might have used that in one other spot in the journal. More feather stitch, some large cross stitch, and here I've put a bread tag, and that again is to do with expiry dates, because it says 23rd January 25. That's the expiry date of the loaf of bread. So that seems to be relevant again. It's coming along. I'm really having fun with it, but it's a very serious journal too. But what I'm hoping is that people will enjoy looking at it and appreciate the artistic side of it, but also that it will help people to really think about what our priorities are as the human race and as a civilization, that we really should be more careful of how we develop land and whether we should develop it. My gratitude journal is coming along, which I've called Grateful, and I have written another week's entry into it. And I'm not going to share everything that I've done in this because it would be a bit the same except for what I've written every week. But I just wanted you to know that I am continuing with it, and I am finding lots of things to be grateful for. I do try to be grateful anyway in my everyday life, and it is really a good practice to have, because even though there sometimes are difficult things happening in a day, usually there are some good things too, and we just need to look for them. And I'm really grateful to Jeri Bellini for instigating this project. Haven't done much in my art journal about fast fashion either, because I've been working on other things, and I do need to allow some things to gel in this journal. It's getting quite full, but I still have spaces to fill, and I want it to take a long time. I don't want it to be finished too soon. So I'm just working on different pages, different elements of pages as I go along, without really making anything too complicated. I want to keep it fairly simple, and it is fairly full, and it has a lot of detail in it, but I don't have a huge amount of detail on each page necessarily. Some have more detail, but I'm just enjoying the process and not thinking ahead too much. So from time to time I will share some more details from my art journal. I am loving working on it.